Today's talk is really a summary of what we have covered in the previous 4 weeks. And I have to say, it really is the tip of the iceberg. I actually teach a program that goes into all the areas that I've taught much more deeply in a 16 class program, with each class being an hour and a half. So it has been challenging to figure out how to teach you this information. And really, what I'm trying to do is give you an overview and a path forward. I just wanted to quickly say that I'm a health promoter at a local health center quite close to where Linda and Charmaine live. And I teach mindfulness there, and I'm also a yoga therapist. And and there is a little bit more information here, but because we've got so much to cover, I'd like to just move on because I think most of you are familiar. I do want to always say that if you're ever not sure about any of the exercises that I am offering on these recordings, please err on the side of caution and discuss any concerns you might have about your participation in this program with your doctor. So what this series has been about, how I decided to structure this series, and after talking with Charmaine and Susan, I really thought that what I wanted to do is get people interested in moving again. And so what I chose to do was to follow off of Dr. Lee's presentation from about a couple of months ago, where she mentioned about the Canadian 24-hour movement guidelines, and there seemed to be a lot of interest in those guidelines. So that's what this 5-class series has been structured around. And the first week was looking at basic movements that pretty much we can all do to support light daily activity. The second week, we talked about balance and fall prevention. So the Canadian movement guidelines are for people ages 18 to 64, and the only addition, if you're 64 plus, is focusing a bit more on balance. That's the only change from the guidelines from age 18 on. So I wanted to include balance because I think everybody loses the ability to balance as they get older. So it's just really good for us to learn a bit more about balance. Week 3, we focused on core strength and good alignment, really important for everything else we do in movement. And then 2 weeks ago, we focused on light resistance training for the upper and lower body. And we did a practice called squat, hinge, push, pull, and carry, which is basically all the movements we do in our daily life. And I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into each of these categories today as we put it all together. So here are the movement guidelines, and I'm going to actually move to this slide because it takes those movement guidelines and gives you actual goals for each of the activities. So on the left here is our physical activity. And the guidelines say that we need to be doing moderate to vigorous aerobic physical activities such that there is an accumulation of at least 150 minutes per week. If we were to divide that by 7, it's approximately 20 minutes per day, which isn't a lot if you divide it that way. 150 minutes can sound a bit intimidating, but that's really only 20 minutes per day. And then muscle strengthening activities using major muscle groups at least twice a week. So these 2 categories are for people aged 18 to 64. And this final category is in addition to these, to add physical activities that challenge balance if you're over 64. So the guidelines are 24-hour guidelines. So they're also saying it's really good to get 7 to 8 hours of good quality sleep. And these guidelines came in 2021, I believe. And I think this is the first time they've talked about sedentary behavior, which is sitting or not moving a lot. And they're really encouraging us to limit the sedentary time to 8 hours or less, which includes no more than 3 hours of recreational screen time on your computer. And boy, if I think back to even 10 years ago, to even ask for that would have sounded just crazy. But the power of social media and Netflix and all our devices have really sucked us into a lot more sitting time and screen time than we ever used to do. And so they're also encouraging us to break up long periods of sitting as often as possible. So, given that, I designed this 5-week series to think about people living with autoimmune conditions and how we could mindfully incorporate these guidelines into your daily life. So, the way I designed these 5 weeks is that there's something in each class for everyone. And I was listening to some of you chat before I started the presentation, and some of you are just dealing with difficult, painful conditions right now. And I really wanted to honor that and to give you space in this program to feel included, even though some days it might be just watching and learning. And that's the best way to practice self care. And each class in this series is designed to build on the one before. So I started with light daily activities, moved on to balance, moved on to core strength, and finished with resistance training. And each one of these categories actually helps inform the next. And each class is designed with an education component and then 20 to 30 minutes of movement that progresses from easy to more challenging. So in today's class, I'm going to point to opportunities and ideas to challenge yourself more if and when you feel ready. And I also recommend, if you're going to add more challenge, to find a personal trainer or a specialized program or a physical therapist that specializes in autoimmune conditions, if you opt to move into more challenging movements that I will be pointing to today. And also, this course series incorporates all exercises recommended by the guidelines and encourages you to do them mindfully. And so this final class is an opportunity to review what we've learned or be introduced to it for the first time, and then to really see what resonates for you or what questions come up for you. And I really want to give us time to actually talk about the barriers, the questions, the not sure about technique, anything you want to ask me. So part of these exercise guidelines, the 150 minutes per week or 20 minutes or per day, is about choosing an aerobic exercise that you like to do most. So aerobic exercise means activities that pick up our heart rate and that are really good for our cardiovascular system. And they could be anything. They could be, I know, Susan, you have your dog, so it could be walking your dog. It could be swimming. There's lots of classes with swimming that are quite gentle on joints. And for some people living with autoimmune conditions, that's a great way to get your autoimmune activity. Some people may be in a place where they want to do more, they're feeling good. So hiking is great. Hula hooping is great. Um, Sitting on a ball is really good for balance, and just sort of moving the upper body around if your lower body or standing is difficult. Chair dancing is also really good where you're moving your upper body and doing figure eights, lifting and lowering one leg. That's an also great way to get aerobic activity if standing is difficult for whatever reason. And finally, I was really interested to learn about arm bicycling or arm ergometers. And I was thinking about Jackie and her recovery and how you can get aerobic activity by actually working the upper body with this bicycling machine. And my understanding is that more and more gyms are getting these machines where you can target the upper body if standing is difficult. Any kind of aerobic activity is earlier in the day will help promote better sleep at night. So that's something to think about, getting those walks or hikes or swimming earlier in the day will help you sleep better in that natural rhythm through the 24-hour cycle. So I also wanted to come back to the class we covered on balance. So everything that I'm covering here, I've delivered a whole class, except for that previous slide, which was the aerobic activity. So balance is important, and there are progressions that you can make towards better balance. And what we reviewed in the balance class, which was the second class, is understanding that our feet for balance are our base of support, and our bodies over top of our feet are our center of body mass. And how you position your center, your body, over your base, which is your feet, um, can help you progress towards balance by gradually lessening the amount of support of your feet. And you can do that by going on your toes, shifting over to one leg, for example. And we went through some of those exercises in class 2, which you'll have recordings for. And also there are ways that you can practice with your arm position, challenging your balance. So what we're doing in a balance class is going from very stable to challenging our balance with lessening the base of support, and also bringing our arms from wider, like this person tight roping, to bringing them closer into the body will challenge your balance. How you position your head and your eyes can challenge your balance. And I sent out a fun post to Susan on the Facebook group about Paul McCartney talking all about eye exercises. And how you can challenge your balance is you can lessen your base of support with your feet. And then you can introduce less feedback with your eyes by being in a safe position where you're not going to fall, but trying to close one eye or both eyes, or standing in tandem like this person is doing here, and changing your head position by looking up, looking down. All those things will challenge your balance, as well as introducing dual tasks. So counting while you're on a practicing walking tandem, like she is, you could be passing a ball from one hand to the other. You could be counting the months back from December to January. These will all challenge your balance, believe it or not. And then finally, changing the surface you are standing on to a more unstable base. So this person's hopping from one rock to another. You can practice balance with putting maybe a cushion underneath your feet to make it less stable. And all of these challenges you want to give yourself, you want to make sure that you're not going to risk falling. But there are all ways you can practice getting better at balancing. And like anything else, it's a practice. And for those of you who are having difficulties with your feet for whatever reason, you can sit on one of those big balls and play with your balance sitting on a ball. So that's balance. I don't know if you can actually see the header here because my banner, I think, might be in the way. Let me just try and move that down elsewhere. I don't know if you can see that better, but it's about postural alignment and core stabilization. And these movements I introduced in week 3, and you may not recognize some of these movements because the movements I introduced in week 3 were, I started you in sitting. So still affecting the same parts of the body as these are, but less challenging. So I want to actually talk about the importance of these movements. And if you're actually going to be working with some of these movements, you really do need to warm up carefully and cool down afterwards. And these are movements that I teach in my 16 class 8-week program. And all of these poses can be modified and adapted to standing and sitting. So don't panic if these feel really overwhelming to you. This movement here, the Superwoman, you can do in standing, and I'm happy to share the movements if you're curious how to do these movements in standing. And this movement as well, strengthening the back of the body. Both of these movements strengthen the back of the body, can be done in standing and sitting. Plank pose can be done against a wall. I can show you other modifications in standing. Side plank, we actually explored last week, carrying a heavy item and standing. This movement can be done against a wall or in a chair, and this movement can be done using a chair. So I don't want to scare you off here. You can challenge and build core stability, holding your body in good alignment in proper posture with adaptations and modifications of these movements. And some of you may feel ready to try on some of these more challenging movements, but I would really recommend having an instructor that you trust to guide you through these movements on the floor. Okay. And then finally, 2 weeks ago in our 4th class, we talked about the exercise guidelines that talk about the importance of resistance training. And recommended in the guidelines was 2 times per week. Now, these are all movements. Again, I don't want you to be intimidated, but I really wanted to give some of you a picture of where I'm pointing to, where you can take your resistance training. And when I teach resistance training in my 16 class 8-week program, I always start with movements or adaptations to these movements. You can always adapt them in sitting or lying, but the goal here is to focus on upper body movements and lower body movements. And each of these movements are designed to strengthen a quadrant of the hip. So the front of your hip, side of the hip, the buttocks or back of the hip, and the inner groin. So all of these movements are designed to bring balance into the lower legs and hip area. And similarly, to bring balance, all these movements will strengthen the front of the shoulder, the outside of the shoulder, the chest, the back of the shoulder, and the upper back. So the thing I wasn't expecting about resistance training, and I start everybody without weights. And I also adapt some of the movements for people who are having difficulty with some of the movements. And as people feel ready, if they feel ready, some people just choose to do these movements without ever adding weights. And I think that's great. And again, these movements really, as you go deeper into resistance training, I really encourage you to find a, either a personal trainer, a physical therapist, or a class or a program with someone who understands autoimmune conditions and the right way to approach mindfully how to not over stress your body as you very slowly and gradually and with great kindness to yourself add more strength training as you go along, recognizing that flares might happen, and that's part of the package deal. And to just continue to love yourself and to listen so carefully to your body and to really respect the pacing that's required. So resistance training recommended 2 times per week. So this is a sample exercise planner that would meet all the exercise guidelines. And, who knows, it might even be fun. That is like, I know we all think about exercise as a should, or many of us do. I know that I have in the past. And when I actually really took these guidelines on and really thought about how to approach it with movements that I enjoyed doing, with people I enjoyed doing it with, and and really thinking about a balanced approach, it actually became fun and something that I wanted to do. Who knew? And so here is a sample week, taking everything that you have learned, or if you're so motivated to go back to the recordings and pick, okay, today I'm going to do balance. Today I'm going to pick resistance training. Today I'm going to do the core strengthening. And if it's working for you, to take it further with, and I can actually help point you in some directions if you're really, really interested. So here's an example. Monday, you could do a weight workout and add a few movements that challenge your balance. And the goal is to do your resistance training 2 times per week. So this could be 30 minutes. And on Thursday, you could do the other day of resistance training so that you meet your 2 times per week goal of 30 minutes each. And this one, you'll notice I haven't included balance. So you really want to give yourself at least 1 day rest if you're working with weights. So I've given 2 days rest here. The Tuesday would be taking the practice of core strengthening that we learned in week 3. And I introduced a really simple practice starting in a chair. Some people chose to go down to the floor. And those movements I showed today would be taking some of those movements still further. And I have found in my own body that a lot of the pain I was feeling actually got less by practicing these core strengthening movements to help improve my posture. And with that improved posture, the resistance training was safer and more effective. So, this is how everything works together. And then for the aerobic activities, I said, okay, Wednesday, go for a swim. And on Saturday, go for a walk with friends. And or any other activity you love to do. That's to me the most important thing. The what is less important than the enjoyment that you have while still meeting these exercise goals.